one steps into a warm bath, one toe at a time, steady and unhurried. The air is cool without being cold, the temperature so close to the average of the land above that your skin forgets it is changing places, as though the cave and the world share a long, slow breath. Your lamp is soft and respectful, and its glow does not push. It simply reveals. In front of you, the path is a ribbon of damp earth. The ceiling lowers and lifts. The walls curve like a murmured sentence written in stone. You walk until the last pale hints of surface light fall away behind you. When you pause, you hear it, the tiny geometry of water falling from a stalactite to a still pool, the subtle thud of a drop into darkness, followed by a patient spreading wave. You feel the humidity on your cheeks. It is nearly saturated here, so full of water that every inhalation is almost a sip, and every exhalation mingles with an ancient mist. You are safe. You are unhurried. The gentle rhythm continues. As your eyes adjust to the idea of nearly no light, you notice how the rock seems to drink your attention. Limestone smooth in some places and rough in others, patches of flowstone that look like folded candles, calcite curtains with their thin edges lit briefly by your lamp like curved paper. The darkness itself becomes a companion, not frightening, just complete. It is a darkness that supports rather than swallows. In this calm, you feel time begin to loosen, like a scarf slipping from your shoulders. There is nothing to perform, nothing to solve, only the slow science of this place, which invites you to listen as if listening were a form of touching. If you were to spend a year here, you would come to know the cave in its seasons, not seasons with colors like summer and winter, but seasons of breath and water. A cave is a stone lung, and it inhales and exhales with changes in pressure outside, a gentle barometric breathing. In winter above, when the air outside is colder and denser, the cave feels that weight. Air will flow in or out through entrances and narrow passages, and somewhere deeper inside, you will sense that faint movement across your skin, a whisper of cool that rises from the floor and trails across the back of your hand. In summer above, when air is warm and light, the direction of that movement can reverse. Without needing to label it, you attune to it. Every day, tiny variations. Every week, a soft trend. Over months, a story of movement that repeats with a comfort similar to ocean tides. The geology of this place is patient. Limestone forms from ancient seas. Tiny organisms making shells, settling into sediments, pressed and transformed by time into thick beds of carbonate rock. Long after the sea retreated, rain fell on the surface, collected carbon dioxide from the soil, and slipped underground through cracks. The rain became just slightly acidic, like a mild hint of citrus on the tongue if you could taste it, and it quietly dissolved the limestone. It did not rush. It found paths along fractures and bedding planes, widening them over thousands, then millions of years. In the old phreatic tubes, round and even. Later, as water tables lowered, the cave drained, air entered, new shapes formed where streams cut channels and scalloped the walls. Scallops are like little bowls in the rock, and they show flow, their curvature pointing gently upstream, which your fingers can trace like the lines of a palm. You can visit them over and over, and each time they tell the same quiet story about water's direction and speed, and how time can carve lasting forms from softness and persistence. Imagine your daily routine here, set not by clocks, but by habit and sensation. You wake when your body has rested enough, not jarred by alarms. Without sunlight, your inner rhythm free runs slightly long, a little more than 24 hours, a length that many people carried in experiments conducted in caves over the past century. In those studies, volunteers went underground for weeks or months. Without sunrise and sunset, their days stretched gently, gradually, often to around 25 hours. You feel that same gradual drift, a soft slide in your schedule, like a tide that moves you a few minutes farther each cycle. To keep yourself connected to the world outside, you could bring a small light that mimics dawn for a while, or you could simply allow the cave to invite your natural rhythm. Either way, you are gentle with yourself. Sleep comes when it comes. Wakefulness arrives when it arrives. You eat simple food. You drink water that carries the taste of the rock, a mineral voice. You listen. The gentle rhythm continues. In the first weeks, you become aware of moistness as a constant companion. Humidity near saturation means that your skin feels smooth and cool. Clothes dry slowly. Paper pages turn softly swollen and slightly curled. There is a reason for this. Warm air holds more water, and the air inside a cave sits at a steady temperature, close to the mean annual temperature above ground. In many regions, that is a middle value. The soil above filters rain, and as water descends, it equilibrates with the temperature of the ground. The result is a space that remembers the climate through temperature and stores the memory through water. Your breath mingles with that memory. The way your exhaled carbon dioxide accumulates in a small chamber teaches you to be mindful and to move. In larger passages, air movement disperses your breath gently. In tighter spaces, you notice even a slight increase, and you choose to pause in roomy places where the cave's natural ventilation keeps the air clear and sweet. Because this is a year in a cave, you have time to meet the residents who are not here to explore or study, but to live. Some are temporary visitors, known as trogloxines. They come and go. Bats are among them. Quietly, softly, imagine a winter chamber where tiny mammals hang from the ceiling like leaves, holding their own weight with a delicate confidence. They slow their hearts and their breaths, conserving energy in the still air. You never shine harsh light on them. You pass at a respectful distance, or better yet, you choose a route that lets them sleep untroubled. You listen for their soft rustle, a sound like silk lightly touched. Other creatures are troglophiles, equally comfortable above and below ground, such as crickets that lay fish in underground streams, their bodies translucent, their awareness shifted from sight to sensations of flow and touch. Small isopods like tiny boats with many oars, spiders with long legs, delicate as dried grasses, millipedes with a patient choreography of steps. These creatures are not here to astonish. They are here because doing the same quiet thing for a long time can be a very successful way to live. You feel kinship with that idea. The gentle rhythm continues. At the heart of cave science lies water. You hear it more often than you see it. It falls in drops that ring like the plucking of very low strings. It moves in thin films down walls, leaving white trails of calcite like chalk lines softly drawn by time. In pools, you may see a lens of calm with faint dusting of floating calcite rafts that look like tiny ice flows. In streams, water folds around rocks with a deliberate whisper. The chemistry is simple in principle and beautiful in practice. Water carries dissolved carbon dioxide from soil, making carbonic acid that dissolves calcium carbonate, the main component of limestone. Once the water enters open air inside the cave, the carbon dioxide can leave, and the water becomes less able to hold the dissolved calcium. Calcite precipitates. Drop after drop, a stalactite grows downward, a thin soda straw at first, hollow and fragile, later thickened by layers. Each layer is a memory of conditions in the soil and the rain at the moment of dripping, a quiet archive. Below, the pool accumulates thin rings of calcite, and a stalagmite grows upward, meeting the stalactite perhaps after centuries, forming a column. You cannot see the growth, and yet it is happening while you sleep, while you breathe, while you whisper to yourself. Patience here is not a virtue, but a property. Over months, you begin to recognize the cave's calendar. In late autumn above, rain tends to increase and you notice more frequent drips, a sharper scent of limestone wetness, faint and clean. Pathways that were dry now glisten. Films of water spread across quiet slopes of calcite, making them look as if they had been buffed by fog. The water carries fine sediments. Sometimes it carries leaves or pollen into the threshold chambers near the entrance, where a faint dusting settles on rocks like faint tea stains. You see only the gentle results. You touch nothing. You learn to step with care, not because of danger, but because of respect for delicate surfaces that may have taken decades to polish themselves into the shapes that delight you. In winter above, snow melt and storms sometimes send stronger pulses through the system. You hear a distant roar through the rock, but where you are, in a roomy gallery, where you have chosen to make your camp, the sound is filtered to a long, low, soothing tone, like a distant ocean in a seashell. You use that sound to sleep, the way one might use a lullaby. Your lamp becomes more of a candle than a headlight, and you lower its brightness to preserve the feeling of enveloping dusk. For a while, the air moving through the passages grows more assertive, the entire system adjusting to pressure differences above. A large, slow exhale that you can feel against your wrist. You place a feather near the entrance to your camp a slow heartbeat. Biology at the microscopic scale is equally serene. Cave walls host films of bacteria and fungi. Some of these microbes negotiate energy in ways that do not require sunlight. They can use chemical gradients, sliding ions and electrons between minerals in a way that resembles faint currents. The result is a soft patina of life on stone, patchy and subtle, sometimes appearing as a faint powder called moon milk, a creamy deposit of tiny calcite crystals and microbial textures that smear easily under a fingertip. You do not smear it. You only notice how it sits like breath on a mirror. When scientists sample it, they do so sparingly, with the quiet understanding that each gram is a chorus of living and mineral processes worth more than the sum of its parts. Living quietly can be profoundly productive, even in darkness. When you light your lamp and look for colour, your eyes adjust to a narrow palette. Stone is not simply grey, it is honey and ivory and tea. Iron oxides add soft umbers. Manganese deposits bring faint purples, like smudges of twilight. Clay that washed in from ancient floods sits in shelves, layered like pages. In some places, stalactites hold tiny beads, known as helictites, that twist gently in defiance of gravity, guided by capillary forces and subtle breezes as they grew. You let your eyes linger on their fine forms, unthreatened by their complexity, content merely to admire. Sound here is a teacher. In the absence of wind, through leaves, or traffic or birdsong, the ear relaxes into sensitivity. Footfalls become statements. A whisper travels farther than you expect. If you clap, the echoes return like polite applause in a small hall. You resist clapping. Instead, you sit and listen to how your own breath seems to draw a quiet nest around you. In a larger chamber, you might hear a drip far away as a tiny bell. The pitch depends on the water drop's size and the volume of the pool it strikes. You can imagine that each calcium carbonate drop that lands writes a note into the music of the cave's growth. The speed of sound changes slightly with temperature and humidity, but here those values are steady. So the acoustics are slow changing, and your perception sharpens with familiarity. In that sharpening, you find rest. On some days, if you were in the right cave, you might see creatures that offer their own light. In rare places, like certain caves in New Zealand, glowworms suspend themselves from ceilings and spin fine silk threads. They emit a cool blue-green glow to attract small insects that wander in from the entrance. You dim your lamp and look up. The roof becomes a gentle constellation. The light is steady, not flashing, a lulling haze of points. The effect is less like fireworks and more like watching gentle embers at the tail of dusk. You let it wash over you until your eyes feel heavy again. The science of darkness extends to your own physiology. In the absence of bright light, the hormone melatonin rises more freely in your bloodstream, encouraging sleep. You find that you drift off earlier when you keep your lamp dim. Then, on days when you turn on a brighter lamp to read or to write, especially if you choose a cooler blue hue, you notice sleep arriving a little later. This is not an error or a problem. It is a soft demonstration field studies, researchers sometimes bring a lamp that simulates dawn within a tent to cue waking gently. You can adopt the same method. Make sunrise and sunset within the cave with the twist of a dial, mindful and intentional. Or, if your aim is to feel what a cave freely offers, you can let darkness guide you, like a river guides a slow boat, and gently surrender to the cycle that arises. You also become aware of how carbon dioxide pools in lower parts of rooms, slightly heavier than air. In very still, low-lying areas, it can accumulate. You pay attention to your breathing. If the air feels stale, you simply walk to a higher point or toward the entrance or into a passage where the cave's own breath is flowing more strongly. The science here does not need alarms. It is something your senses can tell you. Cool comfort replaces any upward flicker of concern. Your body settles. The gentle rhythm continues. Imagine late winter turning to spring above, even if the cave itself holds a steady temperature. Snowmelt infiltrates slowly through the soil, taking with it small traces of what the surface world has been doing. Calcium and magnesium concentrations change. So does the ratio of stable isotopes like oxygen 18 to oxygen 16 in the water. As the water reaches stalagmites and contributes to their growth, it leaves a faint signature of those ratios in each layer of calcite. In a lab, scientists can read these bands with careful instruments and reconstruct patterns of rainfall and temperature far back in time. You do not need the machines to appreciate this idea. It is soothing to know that stone can be a recorder of climate, that a drip can be both the simplest of sounds and the quietest of archives. Even ancient events, like droughts, stand captured in subtle variations of density and color across a stalagmite's cross-section. If you were to sit quietly beside one of these pillars and place your palm near it, the coolness you feel has been built from rains that fell before you were born and before your grandparents were born, a continuity that can make your breath deeper. Sometimes caves hold rivers that continue for long distances, mostly unseen. They are part of karst systems where soluble rock produces sinkholes and springs. If you stand beside an underground river, you can feel its cooling touch on your ankles and hear the slightly hollow thunder it makes in a larger room. On certain days, after a storm above, the river rises. It covers shelves of rock with a smooth skin that reflects your lamp like satin. In a day or a week, it lowers. In the mud it leaves behind, you can see impressions of small paws and tiny feet, visitors who came here before you. Perhaps a fox at the entrance during a storm. Perhaps a salamander taking advantage of the moist corridor. Their tracks tell simple, pleasant stories of movement and curiosity. You leave them undisturbed and choose steps that erase nothing. Light and darkness meet in the twilight zone, near entrances, a gradient that has its own community. Moss can grow there, where soft, diffuse light still falls. Algae create a greenish film on damp walls. Some caves with human traffic can develop lampinflora, tiny plants and algae that thrive near artificial light. The remedy is easy. distance changes as little as possible. The surfaces you see are not only shaped by water adding calcite. In some places, water dissolves the rock even under air-filled conditions through condensation or acidic fog. This is called condensation corrosion. When warm, moist air meets a cooler surface, droplets form. They absorb carbon dioxide and become slightly acidic. They can dissolve microscopic layers. Over decades and centuries, faint cups and textures appear, like a melancholy honeycomb. You can run your fingertips lightly over these microsculptures and feel their softness and open structure, a stone lace that is almost like petrified foam. The air, the water, and the rock continue their small conversations everywhere you look. The gentle rhythm continues. As spring matures above, animals that use the cave as shelter wander a little more. If bats hibernate here, they stir time to time, then return to stillness until warmer weeks invite them to the night outside. You will not follow them out. You choose to hold to the cave and let the surface be an imagined place. It is soothing to imagine the world in the distance, full of grasses and leaves and clouds, while you rest where the air is still and sounds are quiet. The isolation of a cave is not empty. It is full of ancient time and present calm. You find that the minerals teach patience in texture and color. On thin ledges, cave popcorn appears, clusters of calcite like white coral, formed by outgassing of carbon dioxide or by evaporation that leaves behind tiny nodules. On the surface of pools, aragonite needles may form under specific conditions, radiating in sprays that look like frost caught in stone. Gypsum flowers curl out from walls as delicate as blown sugar. You remember that these forms are dictated by small differences in chemistry and microclimate. Calcite and aragonite are both calcium carbonate, but they occupy different shapes at the crystal scale. Which form appears depends on temperature, magnesium presence, rate of precipitation. The result is variety within discipline, a theme that feels like balm for the mind. Sometimes caves include rooms with ice. In cold regions there are cave mouths that store winter cold, forming ice stalagmites from dripping meltwater. These ice forms can last into summer, glowing like opal in lamplight. If your year takes you there, you step gently. The temperature is lower, the air very still. Your breath becomes a little cloud. The ice holds air bubbles like captured bells, and when you touch it, you hear a faint creak inside as the structure adapts. You withdraw your hand and watch instead, respecting that your warmth is a form of change the ice does not need. Even ice caves breathe with the season. In winter, cold, dense air enters and pools. In summer, warm air may skip across the top, leaving the cold below undisturbed. A cave can be an archive of seasons when it sits at just the right altitude and orientation, holding on to winter's memory as a treasured note. By early summer outside, the cave often enters a calmer water regime. Drips become less frequent, some pools lower. The air remains humid, a blanket of near constant moisture that makes each inhale smooth. On days when you move less and read more, you can hear tiny ticks as water finds new paths. Perhaps a thin film has grown into a drop, and perhaps a drop has found a different seam. You imagine a map of flows across the surface, not like a vast river, but like dew reorganizing itself on a web. The smells change slightly as well. Soil above has warmed, and the water that enters now carries a subtle earthy sweetness, the scent of summer rain even in subterranean corridors. Your presence here invites a study of perception. In darkness, small sensations become larger. A grain of sand in your shoe asks for attention. The feeling of your own pulse in your wrist keeps you company like a small drum. Under the weight of rock, with no sky to look at, you notice the way your thoughts move like quiet fish, sometimes slow, sometimes darting, then calm again when you listen to dripping water. The cave is not empty. It is a temple of the ordinary, magnified by stillness. Many people who spend time in caves describe an increase in mindfulness. Without competing stimuli, the mind sets down some of its burdens. Here, facts and feelings rest together. You let them both be. The gentle rhythm continues. If your year includes time with researchers, you may watch them place simple devices to learn without disturbing. A data logger with a small probe records temperature and humidity. A CO2 sensor watches the breath of the cave. A drip counter quietly clicks each time a drop interrupts a beam of light. A tiny vial collects water for later analysis. On a ledge, a bat detector listens ultrasonically, a form of hearing you cannot sense unaided. The devices are gentle. They sit like small guests who whisper. Over months, the data sets accumulate, a proof that patience makes knowledge. In readings plotted gently onto graphs, you can see rhythms, daily breathing, weekly weather systems, seasonal changes in infiltration, and even longer patterns if you remain for several years. In each case, the lesson is that slow places have a tempo. Archaeology sometimes visits caves, too. The oldest art in Europe lies in caves, gentle hand stencils and animal forms drawn in mineral pigments, preserved by darkness. You are not in a painted cave today, but you can imagine layers of human presence across time. Smoke traces on ceilings where people once lit small fires to see. A footprint in silt held for thousands of years until a careful footstep finds it, and then it is covered again to protect it. If you were to encounter such traces, you would step far around, allowing the story to remain a whisper and not a shout. The thought that humans have sought quiet, shelter, and meaning under stone for so long brings a pleasurable kind of humility. The chemistry of what you touch can be gentle as well. Limestone feels silky when it has been dissolved and reprecipitated into smooth flowstone. Dolomite has a slightly different texture. Basalt in lava tubes offers an entirely different set of sensations. In a lava tube, the walls often show the ripples of once moving lava that cooled while it flowed. A frozen river. Skylights puncture their roofs where the surface collapsed. In some places, delicate thin drips of lava solidified into stringy stalactites of rock, their edges fragile. The air in a basalt lava tube is often drier. The floor can be broken with plates of rock like puzzles. The sound of your steps in a lava tube is a little higher, tinging like ceramic. Your year might include a week in such a tube to feel the difference between caves of water's patient dissolving and caves of fire's quick plumbing. Both hold darkness, both invite quiet. Returning to your limestone home, you revisit the phenomena that guided your first weeks. You touch the same walls, and they are the same. You find that you are different. Your senses are tuned. You can detect the softness of a breeze that you could not detect in the first month. In the second month, you begin to mark time in the cave by your own rituals. Tea sipped at the same rock shelf, notes written on paper that smells faintly of dust and mineral water, your handwriting slowing slightly as your thoughts match the cave's tempo. A stone you sit upon warms a little under you, and when you stand, releases that warmth back into the air slowly. You watch that cycle. You notice it day after day. The gentle rhythm continues. Midway through your year, the cave looks the same and feels deeper, like a book you have read twice, and then again, and with each reading you find new soft details. Still awake, comment the secret word, nebula. In the warm months, air movement driven by temperature differences between entrances may slow or reverse, depending on how openings are arranged and how sunlight warms the ground near them. The cave's breath is light, but it is there. Barometric pressure changes always remain in charge. When a storm approaches above, the barometer falls. In response, the cave exhales. You can feel a narrow passage become more vigorous for a day or two. Then, as the storm passes, pressure rises and the cave inhales. The feather near your camp stirs back and forth, reminding you of the sky without requiring you to go there. If you placed a small ribbon at a second location, you could even map the flow changes between rooms by watching those two markers over a week. The cave becomes your weather station, readable without numbers. Through the long arc of the year, you learn the difference between fear and vigilance, between wonder and stimulation. The cave is a gentle teacher. It does not shout. If a passage narrows and the ceiling lowers, you do not push through in a rush. You let your body tell you where comfort ends. You choose to turn back, or you choose to stay where your breath remains long and even. Your lamp battery is always stopped. Your path is known. You take nothing. You leave no trace. The security of routine is calming. The gentle rhythm continues. Beneath your resting place, the cave floor is not empty. It is a repository of fine dusts and clays, transported particle by particle over centuries from above, settling in stillness. This sediment can preserve pollen grains and spores that drifted in, hints of forests and fields and flowers that lived above. Another archive of quiet. In some caves, sediments preserve bones of animals that fell and ceiling notches that mark former water levels, like bathtub rings. You can find passages perched high above current streams, now dry, that once carried water in a previous arrangement of the landscape. The cave is a witness to shifts in the shape of hills and valleys, and in the height of the water table. The landscape evolves, and the cave remembers in stone. You trace one of those notches with your fingertips and sense you are touching water's old home. Over and over, you return to the chemistry that writes. The cave's formations can incorporate trace elements that vary with rainfall and soil processes. Magnesium increases under drier conditions. Strontium may mark particular pathways. Phosphorus can come from guano deposits where bats roosted, nourishing microbial mats that grew around it. Each element adds a faint flavor to the stone's growth. In a lab, a laser can sample a stalagmite line by line, reconstructing the pulses of seasons over centuries. It is comforting to know that even after your year ends, the larger record continues without you, and that your presence did not interrupt it. You might press your hand to a column and simply thank it silently for keeping the time. When you imagine the surface in midsummer, hot with cicadas and sunlight and the long afternoons of heat, the cave continues to offer coolness. Cave air is often at the dew point, the temperature at which water condenses. If you bring something from a warmer, drier place into the cave, moisture will bead upon it, as if the cave were giving it a drink. Your metal thermos collects tiny droplets that merge and fall along the sides. On a smooth wall, condensation gathers and slowly draws patterns, feeding microchannels and then pooling at a ledge. You can listen to those drops the way one listens to rain on a tent, not for meaning, but for comfort. As the year curves toward autumn again, outside rains return, and with them a chance for seasonal floods in the lower passages. Floods do not need to be dramatic here. A rise in stream level brings a deeper, more resonant tone to the distant soundscape. Pools expand, polishing the edges of their basins. Silt is redistributed, smoothing the floors that were rougher in dry months. You recognize the scent of fresh scrubbed limestone that arrives after these events, an aroma like cool stone wetted by rain. The world resets a little. The cave smiles inwardly, if such a thing could be said. The creatures here respond to the seasons in their slow way. Cave crickets may move deeper in summer heat and closer to the entrance when the outside air is mild. Salamanders may be seen more often near small pools in wet months. A blind beetle's life continues, scarcely aware of seasonal arcs, the temperature steady, and the food it eats dependent on small inputs from the surface and microbial mats. These rhythms intersect and then flow apart, each on its own schedule. The balance is quiet and continually negotiated. You sometimes sit with your lamp off, in darkness complete enough that the word black seems too hard for it. This darkness is gentle, absorbing, and it allows your mind to rest. People often report hearing better in darkness, and even feeling as though their skin sees, noticing air currents and changes in openness. In your months underground, you have likely Walking along a passage, you sense when it widens by the way sound behaves and by how air feels on your face. You can tell when the ceiling lowers by a softer change in echo. You move more slowly with your light off, careful and comfortable, the way a cat moves in a new room. Whiskers forward, steps careful, nervousness replaced by attention. You keep a small diary. The entries are simple: a temperature, a note about a drip's rhythm, a sketch of a flow stone. Your pen moves across the page like a trickle, writing only what it needs to write. One day, you copy a poem about patience. Another day, you simply note that you slept well and woke to the sound of water. At the end of each entry, you often write the same words. The gentle rhythm continues. The world above sometimes leaves marks that reach you indirectly. During certain seasons, if people on the surface use road salt, chloride can appear in cave waters in small peaks, detectable with instruments or sometimes with a subtle crispness to the taste, as if the water held a memory of winter roads. Agricultural activities can change nitrate levels. Forest health above can change the amount of carbon dioxide in soil and thus the acidity of infiltrating water, which in turn affects how quickly formations grow or dissolve. Knowing these links invites a tender feeling toward the land above you, even if you do not step outside. Everything is connected by water that moves and stone that listens. Soft but precise knowledge lives in the acoustics of cave exploration. If you choose to measure the echoes, you can count them. In a small room, an impulse sound returns in tens of milliseconds. In a large hall, the reverberation may last seconds. The speed of sound in air at the temperatures found in most caves is about 340 meters per second, varying a little with temperature and humidity. These facts do not require mathematics here. They are felt in how long a note floats. You might sing gently, a sustained low hum, and let it bloom and recede. You might discover that a certain corner makes your hum resonate more, a simple demonstration of standing waves. You become the instrument and the listener. You put your ear to the cave, and it hums back. Geological time compresses the mind into kindness. The cave before you existed before your family's oldest memory, and will continue long after. This perspective is not frightening. It relieves pressure. Your tasks shrink into their proper sizes. You feel a soft dedication to doing each small thing well. Boil water for tea. Read a paragraph. Sweep your sleeping area. Replace a feather that has become too limp to signal airflow. Adjust a drip catcher used by the scientists so that it does not overflow. Smile because you are doing something simple that belongs to this place. If during your year you encounter a cave with active exploration by divers, you may watch from a respectful distance as they prepare, their equipment gleaming softly like shells. Underwater caves extend the idea of darkness into buoyancy. The divers move slowly, mindful of silt that would bloom into clouds at a careless kick. Guides are laid along the passage, a lifeline for the return, and lights are used not to promise, but to reveal. Even in this more technical world, the same soft principles apply. Patience, redundancy, a lulling focus. You do not need to enter the water. Watching the measured ritual can be as calming as watching a former midnight train glide through a station, purposeful and restraining its own noise. You come to love the mineral sounds under your fingers. Chert nodules embedded in limestone feel smoother and denser. Clay underfoot is slippery at a certain moisture, sticky at another, and you learn by walking enough to make it predictable and safe. The way your boot sole presses a print into soft silt and then lifts, leaving the ground as you found it, becomes a practiced art. You step where others have stepped to protect fragile surfaces. Your route becomes kinder each time you travel it. On some evenings, you imagine the history of cave science. Early naturalists, carrying candles, noted the way smoke rose and found openings. This simple observation was used to find new passages, following air movement. Later, explorers used carbide lamps, then battery-powered lights. Scientists mapped caves with tape and compass, plotting lines into living maps, which grew year by year, like roots reaching out. They brought small vials of water back to laboratories and learned about present-day chemistry and past climates. Biologists catalogued life that had hidden from the sun for eons. Each generation added a gentle layer to our understanding. You are part of that lineage by your careful attention. You look, you listen, you write. The presence of darkness invites a consideration of light itself. Photons scatter from surfaces. In air filled with mist, a beam becomes visible, a column of faint silver particles floating in each. When you lower the brightness, edges soften, shadows breathe. At high brightness, the beam is narrow and hard. You choose softness. You aim your lamp away from formations and face it down to avoid dazzling creatures that may be sensitive. The cave becomes kinder in the gentler light, a place where the blackness is not shoved aside, but accompanied like a friend. By your 10th month, you do not seek novelty. You seek the known, and you find it again and again, and it renews you. The polite echo in the big room, the cool breath near the narrow passage shortly after a storm, the smell of fresh water on stone in early autumn, the faint click of a drip counter in the research station you pass each day, the same small spider at the same corner of the same rock, a neighbor whom you do not need to name. Repetition becomes a cradle. In the final season of your year, you think about how caves connect to the rest of the world through springs. Water that has traveled quietly through calcite and clay emerges in a pool at the base of a hill, or as a flow into a river, cold and clear. The chemistry of that spring tells of the cave's journey, a certain hardness from calcium and magnesium, a certain temperature stability. Communities sometimes draw water from these springs. Protecting the recharge area above the cave becomes an act of both science and love. You may never see the sunlit pool, where the cave's veins become a surface artery, but in your mind you can feel its coolness and its constant gift. If you pass through a chamber with stalagmites colored by mineral impurities, vice versa. This is a record of changes over such a long time that it sits beyond individual seasons. It also shows how the cave incorporates minor, gentle differences into lasting form. You place your hand near such a formation, not on it, and you imagine a drop forming high above, travelling the thin straw of calcite inside the stalactite, brimming, falling, striking, spreading, and leaving behind a layer you cannot see. Repeat that thought 1,000 times. Repeat it 1,000,000 times. The result is a pillar that you can walk around. Under the touchless palm of your hand, you measure confidence in the small. The gentle rhythm continues. There are caves whose entrances receive daylight as a blue shaft from above. In these, certain hours offer a beam that seems solid, a column of sky descending. Dust motes and tiny insects drift through, becoming small moving stars. If your year takes you to such a place even once, you sit and watch for as long as you like. The column moves with the sun's slow arc, and then it fades, and the cave returns fully to itself. The memory of that blue stays in your mind like a quiet bell. You carry that bell to sleep, and it rings without sound in your dreams. You might feel curiosity about your own body's adaptation over the year. Your sense of balance becomes more precise in uneven spaces. Your hearing maps rooms more quickly. Your skin notices humidity as a mood rather than a number. Your respiration slows during sleep in cool, stable temperatures. Your cardiac rhythm finds a steady pace. In this environment, the ordinary functions feel like they are part of the cave, as if you are in duet. You breathe in. The cave holds your exhalation briefly, then cool air sips in to take its place. You drink water that once fell as rain a season or two earlier. You are part of a cycle that moves too slowly to see, and yet you feel it. In some caves, the floor holds calcite crystals that grew underwater for extended periods. When the water lowered, the crystals remained like fields of planted glass. They are fragile. You walk far around them. If you shine your lamp across their angles, the light refracts and reflects in subtle ways, creating patterns in the dark. You do not need sparkle to experience beauty. A faint glimmer is enough. Your eyes, having lived for so many months at low levels, find wonder in gentle gradations that would have gone unnoticed above. With a scientist's gentle curiosity, you consider isotopes again, but this time in carbon. The carbon in stalagmites can carry signals of vegetation above. When forests flourish, the soil carbon dioxide tends to be higher, influencing the carbon isotopic composition of seepage water and the calcite it precipitates. In times when vegetation was sparse, such as cooler periods or after disturbances, the carbon signature shifts. Thus, stone holds echoes of leaves and roots. The cave is not separate from the forest. It is a memory palace for the land. You meditate on time. A speleothem may grow at rates measured in tenths of a millimeter per year. Your thumbnail's growth across 1 month is faster. Yet here, these tiny increments accumulate into structures that fill rooms. Small changes past weeks, you revisit the entrance. The light of day is there, not blinding, just different. You stand at the edge of the twilight and breathe the scent of fallen leaves if it is autumn, or blossoms if it is spring. You listen to birds from your shaded place, and they sound cheerful and busy in a way that makes you smile without effort. Then you turn back, stepping inward again, not as retreat, but as returning to a room where you have learned to rest. In your final days, you gather the images and sounds that have soothed you. The soft percussion of water, the slow breathing of air, the fragrance of damp stone, the cool touch of calcite, the faint glitter of a crystal edge, the gentle scuttle of a small creature across the silt, the quiet presence of a bat in safe slumber, unbothered by your passing, the patient arc of a stalactite building its straw within the dark. The minimalism of this world, its trust in few elements, is an easing balm. You pack your things slowly, one object at a time, and as you do, you imagine all that remains when you go. The cave does not change its habits. It goes on dissolving and precipitating in almost invisible amounts. It continues breathing in response to the precious sky. Creatures continue to feed and sleep, to hatch and feel, to hide and to glide. The data loggers continue to note the breathing and dripping. The world above continues to reign and to rest. You leave as gently as you arrived. Before you step out, you sit once more in a big room and listen. You dim your lamp, and in the friendly darkness, you feel the cave collect your thoughts and rest them around you like stones arranged in a circle. You understand that caves are usually quiet, but that does not mean empty. They are full of slow processes and delicate lives and long memories. To spend a year within such a place is to remember how to be slow, how to be soft, how to be present. You hold that knowledge somewhere easy to reach. Now, as we return to the surface of our own lives, to rooms and beds and the small sounds of home, remember that the cave remains under the hills, breathing steadily, a cool, patient companion to your sleep. If this quiet journey soothed you, you can softly subscribe and leave a gentle like to support these calm explorations, so we can keep releasing them regularly for you. Rest well. Breathe slowly. Imagine yourself in that deep, safe darkness, and let the gentle rhythm continue as you drift.